Hi there and welcome along. Today we're going to have a look at the Regal, later to become the ABC, and finally the Cannon in Great Yarmouth, Norfolk in the UK. Great Yarmouth in England is a long-standing popular seaside resort that achieved huge popularity with holidaymakers across the years, particularly in the 1950s to the 1970s. It was nicknamed the Blackpool of the South. The building that stood on the site prior to the Regal was the Theatre Royal. That first opened in 1898 and improved in 1920. It stood on the corner of what is now the Market Gates precinct, but it was demolished in 1928 to make way for the Regal. The building of the Regal Cinema began in April 1933 and it was built at a cost of £50,000 as a large cinema with stage facilities. The front of the Regal was 60 feet high and the rear was considerably higher than the centre. It was built for the Regal Theatre Company and was designed by F. Howard and T. Derbyshire of the architectural firm Yates, Cook and Derbyshire. Construction was by local builder J. Balls and Sons, and the building opened on the 1st of January 1934 with the films The Private Life of Henry VIII and The Air Hostess. Film star Merle Oberon made a personal appearance. Now the site was long and narrow, and the stipulation for a seating capacity of 1,500 resulted in a lofty auditorium and a very steep balcony indeed. 826 seats in the stalls, 674 in the balcony. The circle was supported by subsidiary steel rakers, which in turn were supported by the main girder, which was 11 feet deep, and it spanned the full width of the auditorium, and it weighed a mere 14 tons. The proscenium was 63 feet, diminishing to 43 feet, and the front stage was 17 feet deep. The Regal also benefited from a large buffet lounge on the first floor above the foyer. The auditorium also boasted a Compton 2-manual 5-ranks theatre organ with illuminated console and limitless colour changes. Now the screen was on a counterweight system and was easily flown to allow stage shows. The giant twin Roxy horns could also be flown. Although built primarily as a cinema, it became a very popular venue for live shows too, particularly in the busy summer seasons. In the early days, the projectors were Ernieman No. 6 projectors with water-cooled gates, with Western Electric soundheads and Peerless Magnarchs, supplied by Walter Dore of London. Later, there were Ross projectors, and in the final years, a Philips FP20 with a cake stand. Taken over by Union Cinemas in 1936 and operated by ABC, Associated British Cinemas, from 1937, it didn't change its name from Regal to ABC until 1963. On a sombre note, on Friday, May the 3rd, 1946, tragedy struck the Regal when Chief Projectionist Percy Edward Ellis fell from a height of 60 feet while climbing a ladder above the stage. He died shortly afterwards. The second projectionist, Jack Mather, witnessed the event. He heard Mr. Ellis make an exclamation, then felt something brush past him and heard a bang. At the inquest, an area engineer for ABC said that he had checked out the equipment and everything was all right. Indeed, this tragic event echoed a more sorrowful note in the theatre's history. But the Regal was by no means the only cinema or theatre in town, but it was arguably the most prominent, and it fared very well with its eclectic mix of great film and live entertainment. Each summer, top showbiz names would perform twice nightly for 20 weeks to packed houses Monday to Saturdays. On Sundays, there was the Sunday Specials, which featured many top bands from the 60s. The bill for one show featured Cilla Black, Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas, the Nashville Teens and Sounds Incorporated. Another was the Swingin' Blue Jeans, the Foremost and the Mersey Beats, all in the same show. Morecambe and Wise also appeared at the ABC, and the Beatles appeared there twice in 1963, the 30th of June and the 28th of July. Between the popular stage shows and being a first-class cinema, the Regal ABC was a hugely popular venue, helped in no small way by the promotional activities and events planned and executed by various managers. In later years, after the live show concluded, the screen was dropped into position for late-night film shows. Now, Frank Marwood joined the Regal right from the start in 1934 as projectionist and remained there until 1937. He recalls that in the early days there was a 3-hour programme of cine variety which involved a talent show. If there were not enough entrants, then the staff had to fill in. On one such occasion, Frank had to leave the box to take part in the Hercules roller cycling competition. He had to ride the cycle on the stage in competition with the entrants and then get back up to the box pretty quickly. The competition ran for a week in 1935, organised by manager Mr. Woolley. The winner was Mr. Daltew, secretary of the Great Yarmouth Wheelers, and Miss Lanham won the ladies' final. And the picture shows Mr. Woolley on the far left at the presentation of the Regal Cup on stage. In January 1987, the ABC was taken over by Cannon Cinemas, and in February the Great Yarmouth ABC was renamed the Cannon Cinema, and it was operated for the last couple of years of its life by them. But Cannon were not in a healthy financial position at that time, to say the least. In 1988, rumours were rife that the cinema theatre was set to close. Even the local Dramatic Society, who had previously booked the ABC for the Spring Bank Holiday Week of 1988 for a production of The Sound of Music, were unable to get a confirmation of the booking. Appeals for confirmation were met with stony silence both locally and from the Cannon Group head office. But sure enough, on Thursday the 24th of May, after the final screening of Eddie Murphy in Raw, the cinema theatre closed its doors for the very last time. The building had been sold to Dixon's Commercial Properties, who planned to redevelop the site. Now, obviously to frustrate the efforts of those who would campaign to save the cinema, the seats were removed immediately after the cinema closed on that final night. Steve Hudson was projectionist at the Royalty in Great Yarmouth, but by the time the Regal closed, he worked for Cannon in Norwich. He said, "We all had to go over and help strip the place out. It was a very sad day indeed." Now it seems apparent that the troubled fortunes of the Cannon Group resulted in the Regal ABC in Great Yarmouth having to pay a terrible price. With very little fuss, the theatre was then demolished in July 1989. It may have been just a figure on the bottom of Cannon's ailing balance sheet, but the Regal ABC was so much more to so many people. The old stage door sign was presented as a memento to the landlady of the nearby Theatre Tavern, a popular spot for performers and staff. She had requested that she be allowed to have it. Steve Whelan commented, "Lonnie Donegan owned a white Elvis TD21 sports saloon, which was often parked in the alley adjacent to the theatre. I'm staggered that such a noble building in such a prominent position was allowed to be demolished, and for what?" Caroline Jones says, "The conversation of the day fought hard to save it, but the council wanted it gone. A total disgrace. It was replaced by an unremarkable, ugly row of shops." Michael Barnard said, "It was a beautiful Art Deco cinema. One thing I remember about this theatre cinema was the extremely steep balcony. It's often still fondly remembered. It should never have been demolished." Kevin Goodwin says, "The circle was so steep it was actually scary. I think I only went up there once." Gaz Freeman said, "I watched the last ever film screened there in May 1988, then watched the front doors being locked for the final time. It was so very sad." But in its place, a fast food outlet, a card outlet and a charity shop were built. Once again, I have to ask the question, why was this beautiful building, this wonderful theatre and cinema, allowed to be demolished, to be replaced by a simple little row of shops that quite easily could have been placed somewhere else? Well, that's it for this one. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. That helps me a lot. And don't forget to check out the other videos on this channel. Until next time, be good to each other and I'll see you soon. Ta-da.